Fantastic, fantastic. Well, hi everybody. We're excited to be engaged in this amazing Torathon with everyone who's with us on Zoom, Facebook, whatever platform you're watching us from. It's really fantastic to have this chance to celebrate the Torah of Shivat Eretz Tzvi, to share it with you, and partner with you in this moment of Torah, and hopefully in a great more Torah that will continue to happen, to emerge from our yeshiva. So it's really a wonderful opportunity to be with everybody today. And for today, maybe a word about myself. My name is Rav Matthew Nitzanim, a Ram at the Yeshiva, and I want to focus on um, this passage that appears in an essay by Rav Soloveitchik, the essay entitled Catharsis, which I think is really fitting for us to take a look at as we approach Shavuot. It's close to my heart because it connects to a sugya that I had the opportunity to study with students at the yeshiva not so long ago, when we were studying Sanhedrin last year. And so this is, in many ways, it sort of ties together a lot of the Torah that I think is very reflective of the yeshiva in many ways. And so we're going to start with this passage from Rav Soloveitchik, and move from there to a couple other places in the writing of Chazal. What do I mean by this? Rav Soloveitchik has a discussion of a midrash, right? This passage that appears in rabbinic writing, in the writing of Chazal. And what I want to suggest is that Rav Soloveitchik reads it wrong, right? I want to put that on the table before we even get started, before we get to the content. Excuse me. I want to argue that Rav Soloveitchik actually presents the opposite reading of what we might be able to find within this midrash, which can tell us something about how we should relate to Torah, and specifically how we should relate to the observance of mitzvot. Because Shavuot is coming. Shavuot is a time when we are reminded of our deep connection to the Torah, mitzvot, that which Hashem, that which the Torah asks of us. And we have to consider this moment, what is the nature of our relationship with the observance of mitzvot? And at the core of what I want to get at today is the Torah easy or hard? Now, at some point, that's subjective. Whether you find Torah observance or mitzvah observance easy or hard is really kind of up to you, in the sense of how does it you experience those different elements of doing that which the Torah asks of us. But my question is whether the Midrash, whether Chazal, think of the Torah, think of the mitzvot as the kind of thing that's difficult, or the kind of thing that's pretty easy to do. This matters because in Rav Soloveitchik's picture, in the essay Catharsis, in the 1970s, Rav Soloveitchik argues that a core element of Torah observance is the fact that it's hard. And hence, it is meant to be cathartic, right? There's something about the experience of having to push hard on ourselves, personally, emotionally, spiritually, in order to observe mitzvot. Rav Soloveitchik thinks of that as an essential element of what it means to do Torah, to live Torah. To experience that challenge is a part of what Torah is all about. Let's take a look together at a passage from Catharsis, where we'll see that Rav Soloveitchik tries to draw out this idea from a midrash that appears in Shir Shirim Rabbah about the Torah. We'll go back for a moment in Rav Soloveitchik's own writing, and he writes the idea of catharsis, right? In Rav Soloveitchik's thinking throughout this essay. If you're looking for some Shavuot reading, catharsis is available online on Tradition's website, Tradition the Journal. So that's a free download. Feel free to have a read over Shavuot. It is a really eye-opening essay in terms of Rav Soloveitchik's general thought and philosophy. And he writes as follows: the idea of catharsis through the dialectical movement, right? Dialectical movement, which he describes earlier as this sort of back and forth between pushing forwards, going outwards, trying to sort of let your natural instincts sort of run wild in ways that are in line with the Torah asks of us. That needs to be balanced with reining in your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, allowing Allah to control all of that. He sees that as a dialectic. There's a back and forth, and he says that the idea of catharsis through the dialectical movement manifests itself in all halachic norms regulating human life. He thinks that this shows up in every part of the of our life, right? Where halacha has this way of making space for, on the one hand, self-expression, but at the same time, self-regulation. Yet it continues nowhere, however, does this doctrine of dialectical catharsis assert itself more frequently than does in the aesthetic hedonic realm. Okay, so he's going to say that when it comes to that which has to do with what we enjoy, and with pleasure, that's where this is going to really come to the fore. And he writes as follows: how does man purge himself in this realm? By engaging in the dialectical movement, by withdrawing at the moment when passion reaches its peak. The stronger the grip of the physiological drive is felt by man, the more intoxicating and bewildering the prospect of hedonic gratification, the greater the redemptive capacity of the dialectical catharsis, of the movement of recoil. He says, it is in the space where we experience pleasure or desire, where it is that much more powerful when we find the way to rein ourselves in, to control ourselves by surrendering ourselves to the dictates of the halacha, of the Torah, of Hashem. And it is this context which he cites a midrash. It's midrash from this midrash appears in Shir Shirim Rabbah. It's a comment on a pasuk in Shir Hashirim, in the Song of Songs, chapter 7, verse 13, which is in the text where we have these ostensibly two characters, the male character and the female character, and the female character is being praised, and the text writes in Shir Hashirim, "Bitznech arimat chitim suga v'shoshanim," that your belly is like a heap of wheat, set about or surrounded by. That word suga is in some ways related to, or at least the rabbis see it as related to, the Hebrew word, the rabbinic Hebrew word siag, like a fence. So suga is surrounded by, fenced in by shoshanim. Shoshanim are some sort of flower. In modern Hebrew, shoshana is often used to refer to a rose. Though it is entirely possible, as Rav Soloveitchik notes, if the translation that he cites here, that in biblical Hebrew, that shoshanim refers to lilies. So there's there's a description of being surrounded by, fenced in by, some sort of flower. We'll go with roses for now. I'm going to read the midrash here in the English. Thy belly is like a heap of wheat set about with lilies. It often happens that a man takes a wife when he is 40 years of age. In a different version of the midrash, it says either 20 or 30. So I guess different approaches to when people get married. It says, when after going to great expense he wishes to associate with her, she says to him, I have seen a rose-red speck. And he immediately recoils. What is this rose-red speck? So other midrashim can help us sort of interpret what's happening here. This rose-red speck is a reference to the halachot of nidah, right, where there's an obligation for a man and a woman, if they're married to each other, that if a woman gets her period, that she enters a state of nidah, and when that happens, the man and the woman are forbidden to one another. So when that happens, the woman needs to tell the man, that she's in a status of nidah, and so we have this sort of euphemism, I've seen a rose-red speck. And what does the man do? He recoils, right? There's this moment of union, of sexual expressions about to happen. It turns out there's a prohibition. He stops. Continuing in the midrash. What made him retreat and keep away from her? Was there an iron fence? Did a serpent bite him? Did a scorpion sting him? Okay, now, second case. A dish of meat is placed before a man, and he is told some forbidden fat has fallen into it, what's referred to as chela. Similarly, Midrash asks, he says, he withdraws his hand from the food. We ask, what stopped him from tasting it? Did a serpent bite him? Did a scorpion sting him? Or we have these two cases where there's a desire, right? Whether it's a sexual desire, a gustatory desire. There's something we want, a physiological pleasure that we're after. And suddenly, which in theory should be totally allowed and fine, yet suddenly something changes where it becomes forbidden. And the person who had that desire stops. And the Midrash says, what stops this person from engaging in forbidden behavior? Is there some sort of powerful force, a fence, or a serpent? What stops this person? Only the words of the Torah, which are as soft as a bed of lilies. What stops this person from engaging in forbidden behavior is only the Torah, the soft Torah. Now, Rav writes, bride and bridegroom are young, physically strong, and passionately in love with each other. Both have patiently waited for this rendezvous to take place. Just one more step and their love would have been fulfilled, a vision realized. Suddenly, the bride and groom make a movement of recoil. He gallantly, like a chivalrous knight, exhibits paradoxical heroism. He takes his own defeat. Right, what Rav is describing is he thinks that there's this great heroism in having this desire and overcoming that desire that you have in the name of Torah. He thinks that the way to read this midrash that we've seen is really about the tremendous strength that it takes to withstand our desires in order to fulfill the Torah. And this sort of forms the basis of a big part of Rav Soloveitchik's theology, which is that central to religious observance is the willingness to sacrifice one's own desires, one's own preferences in the name of the Torah. This is later termed by there's a particularly influential essay by Professor Ronit Yershai from Bar-Ilan University, which addresses this, and it's been referenced in other writing as well. What's been called Akedah theology, right? A theology which is associated with Rav Soloveitchik and argued with a couple of other thinkers as well, where this notion of building upon the Akedah, the story of Abraham, demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice Isaac. The sense that we're meant to overcome our desires, our intuitions, our wants, overcome all of that in the name of the Torah. Right? If the Torah says to do something, we surrender ourselves to the Torah against that which we would want or feel in our hearts. That, for us, is not just an element of Torah, right? Everyone will agree that Torah sometimes asks of us Mesirut Nefesh, to go the extra step, to go the extra distance. But for Rav in what we might term Akedah theology, as it emerges from here, as reading this midrash, it is not just sometimes necessary, it is essential to religious observance. It might even be kind of the point of religious observance, to overcome that which we feel within our hearts, that willingness to sacrifice that which we want, that which we desire, that which we feel, in the name of the Torah. Whoa. This notion of catharsis is really central to Rav Soloveitchik's thinking, and what I want to do is poke a hole in his argument. Rav Soloveitchik has his philosophical argument, and that's not really what we're after today. But there is what to consider. Is it really is that really the right way, sort of spiritually, religiously, to think about what it means to be observant of Torah? But I just want to focus on this midrash about the lilies or the roses, and see if maybe as we approach Shavuot, as we imagine Har Sinai being filled with blooming flowers, is there another way of reading what this language is in this midrash, which for Rav Soloveitchik is kind of the crux of his argument, right? Where in this essay Catharsis, this is sort of his clearest piece of evidence of Chazal believing in what he thinks is this central element of Judaism, of controlling ourselves, reining ourselves in. The nice thing about Midrash, or really we should say about rabbinic writing in general, this is something which is a key part of our learning, especially in morning seder in the yeshiva, is that oftentimes we can have an agadah, a story, or a sugya, the discussion of a halachic subject, which appears more than once in rabbinic writing, right? Because the rabbis are engaged in conversation and discussion over the course of multiple decades, if not centuries. And there's lots of editing that happens in lots of different volumes, and things can show up in more than one place. And something really fruitful that we can do in our learning is find different versions of the same story or sugya in different parts of rabbinic writing, in a different masechet, in a different work, and use them in order to understand one another. And so what we can do in this case is take a look at other appearances of this midrash about the softness of the words of Torah, that that reins us in, and try to figure out what that means. Because what Rosavichu is suggesting here is that it is the courage, the spiritual strength of the Jew at hand, who's able to control themselves, even though it seems like the Torah is so soft and weak. I mean, the weakness or softness of the Torah, that the Torah is as soft as roses or as lilies, is meant to reflect the fact that it takes great control to withstand the desires that would tell us to trespass the words of the Torah. And yet, there might be another way to read the same story. In Avot Rabbi Natan, another work of Midrash, we see this same Midrash, the same teaching appear, referencing the word Hari Omer Bitnech Armat Chitim Sugab Shoshanim. And the same idea that we're referencing this pasuk from Shir Hashirim 7:3 about the female character in Shir Hashirim, often allegorized as the Jewish people, being somehow surrounded by or fenced in by roses or by lilies. And here we see Davar Acher Bitnech Armat Chitim Elu Mitzvot Kalot Harakot. What we're talking about in the discussion of this pasuk is the mitzvot which are kalot, easy, and hence rakot, soft, and then the suga v'shoshanim, that the Jews are surrounded by these roses, these lilies. Right, jumping ahead, hakitzad. What is the case we're talking about? Ishtoni da imo beveito. Right, we have again a married couple, and the woman discovers that she is in a status of nida. Right, in theory, this couple, right, they could choose to have sexual relations or not. Is there anyone who can tell this person what to do or what not to do? Right? Does anybody see what's happening within the confines of their home, such that anyone will know whether they've done something right or wrong? There's no one checking. There's no one to be afraid of, save for the one, namely God, who commanded them to observe this mitzvah. And similarly, other examples, right, where we have other mitzvot where for example, we cite the mitzvah of Parshat Challah, right? When baking bread, right? You have dough, you're meant to separate a small piece and give it, in theory, to the Kohen. Today, we give it simply to we burn it. In that way, it is sort of supposedly given off to where it needs to go. All you have to do is take a little piece. No one's ever going to know, right? We have these mitzvot where no one's checking, save for God. And here we say, Eilu mitzvot kalot harakot keshoshanim. These are the simple mitzvot, which are as soft as lilies. When the Jewish people do them, they are brought in to the world, to the life of the world, of the world that is coming. Right, the language that's used here in this version of the Midrash refers to this mitzvah of nida and the other similar mitzvot, not as mitzvot that are a challenge, where it's a difficulty and it's part of the religious life to overcome your strong desire. On the contrary, these are described as easy mitzvot. Right, that even though there's no one to stop you, we're not worried that you're not going to observe the mitzvot because it's easy. You have it in you. We see that the Midrash is going to the Jews see the mitzvot as roses, as simple, soft, and therefore it's not going to be a challenge for them to observe these mitzvot. This is even more striking in another version of the same Midrash that appears in Masechet Sanhedrin, which just about a year ago we were studying in the yeshiva. It writes as follows. Again, Sugava Shoshanim, we're referring to this pasuk in Shir Hashirim being fenced in by roses or by lilies. That even though the Torah is soft as these lilies or roses, nonetheless, the Jewish people will not make a pirza, a breach in this wall. Let's keep going. We'll see how it's taken here. It is similar to the story that is told about this Mina, an apostate, a heretic, who approaches Rav Kahana, Amritu nida shari lichud b'hade gavra. It is said that a woman who is in a status of nida, right, and hence again, this married couple, they are forbidden to one another sexually. Yet nonetheless, shari lichude, they're allowed to have yichud together, right? Generally speaking, we have a prohibition on yichud, on seclusion, right, where a man and a woman who are forbidden to one another are not allowed to be secluded in a space together. And yet, when if a married couple is in a position of of nida, there's no prohibition on yichud. Now, I suppose there's a logistical challenge there, right? They share a house. But what the Gemara is going to tell us is a more fundamental reason why this is the case. But this heretic is surprised by this. How can it be that they're allowed to share a home, share a bedroom, even when they're in a status of nida? Could it be that the fire is lit, yet it won't burn? Right? We know that people have desire in them, right? In this case, we're talking about sexual desire. That's a real part of human life. That's a real part of a married relationship. So aren't we worried that they're going to break the rules of the Torah? Says Rab Kahana, Amar le, HaTorah he'ida aleinu. The Torah is testifying to us. Suga b'shoshanim. We are fenced in, surrounded by roses. Shafilu kisuga b'shoshanim. That even though we're merely fenced in by these roses, these soft roses, lo yifartzu behen pratzim. We won't make a breach in the wall. Right, the way that this midrash, right, the way that Rav Kahana is reading this idea here in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, is that Sugam Shoshanim is not describing these mitzvot which we then have to find a way, we have to rein ourselves in. The opposite. The line Sugam Shoshanim, the notion that we describe the mitzvot as soft, like roses, is actually talking about us. HaTorah hida aleinu. The Torah is assuring us that we know that it's going to be easy for us, that we can handle the Torah. That even though, in theory, there would be this great sexual desire between this couple, we allow them to have yichud together, we allow them to be secluded together because the Torah trusts us. The Torah knows that we can handle the Torah, even though the mitzvot are as soft as roses. Even though in theory it would be so easy to trample upon these flowers, the Torah trusts us that we respect the lines that are set out to us by the Torah, and we have it within us to observe it with ease. Similarly, Reish Lakish, Amar Mehach, Reish Lakish is going to cite a source that gets at the same idea. He cites a different pasuk in Shir Shirim from chapter 6, verse 7. Kefela charimun rakatech, right? Your forehead is like the peel of the pomegranate. And we're going to read that word rakatech allegorically. Afilu rekanin shebach melein mitzvot karima. That even those who are most rekanin, those who are empty, and those who are devoid of Torah observance, they are full of mitzvot like a pomegranate, which is overflowing with its seeds. Rabbi Shlomo is trying to say that even those who, in theory, you might think are empty of Torah, nonetheless they are full of mitzvot. Right? It's a part of them, a part of who they are, that nonetheless they have mitzvot. Right? And so what the way that the Midrash is read here in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, and similarly in Avot Rabbanatan, is that Sugam Shoshanim is not telling us that the Torah is difficult and we have to find it within ourselves to rein ourselves in so that we don't end up trespassing the Torah. The opposite. The Sugam Shoshanim is going to tell us that the mitzvot are easy. That it's not a challenge to observe the Torah, that the Torah is telling us, don't worry, you're going to be fine, because built into your being is the capacity to observe the Torah. Hashem trusts us to observe the Torah. Right? In some sense, what we've done here is we've highlighted that what Rav Soloveitchik is offering us is one way to read a midrash, in which the punchline is the Torah is difficult and essential to the experience of religious life, is to find the Torah difficult and to face that difficulty. And yet, if we look at other appearances of this midrash, this interpretation of the pasuk of the verse, elsewhere in rabbinic writing, we'll discover that maybe the right way to read this midrash is not about how the Torah is difficult. The opposite, adrabah. the Torah is actually quite easy to do. The Torah trusts us that we can handle it. The Torah didn't need to put up a fence or set up a snake or a scorpion to stop us from breaking the Torah, because the Torah trusts us. The Torah knows that even with a hedge of roses, which would be so easy to trample, we know to follow the rules. We can handle that emotionally and spiritually. As we approach Shavuot, we need to ask ourselves, do we find the Torah difficult to do? Is it a challenge which we're meant to live up to? Or do we feel that the Torah is deeply ingrained within us? Do we find that the Torah is just a part of who we are? It comes naturally to us. And that we can lean into that comfort that we have with Torah in order to live out a life of mitzvah. I see the value in Rav Soloveitchik's reading and in the theology that emerges from there, because there are times when the Torah can be hard. And yet, I really find that I think the really accurate reading of this Midrash, and also the more meaningful reading of this Midrash, is to say that Hashem trusts us that we can do the Torah. Hashem believes that if we really live a life of Torah, it will just come easily, naturally to us. That will be the life that we lead. And so I give us all a bracha as we approach Shavuot. For some of our Northern Hemisphere students, we're coming up on the tail end of a year. Our alumni, those who are in university, are coming up on the end of a year, moving on to their the next year, maybe graduation, a next adventure. We have our Northern Hemisphere students and families who are continuing in their studies in yeshiva. There's a lot that lies ahead of us as we approach this Shavuot in our yeshiva family and community, and for all of us, for all of Klal Yisrael. And I give us a bracha that we should, even if the Torah comes as more of a challenge at times, we should stand up to that challenge. And yet, even more so, I give us a bracha that we should find the Torah to be simple. It should come easily to us. It should strike us not as a fence that we have to face, but just a hedge of roses. That it comes naturally to us, easily to us, to observe the Torah, to experience and enjoy the fragrance of Torah as we come into the holiday of Matan Torah, into Shavuot. Wishing everyone well, and Hatzlacha Rabbah. Join us in this campaign. Join us in the study of Torah and supporting Yeshiva. And a pleasure to see you all.